Hello everyone, you're with CarBuyer.com.sg and beside me right now is the VW T-Cross. You saw it at the Singapore Motor Show all the way in January, but the car is finally here. Now, if you've never heard of a T-Cross and you're wondering what it is, it's actually Volkswagen's smallest SUV. But I can tell you, it actually doesn't feel like a small car or small SUV. Come have a closer look and we'll show you why. First things first, let's start with my favorite part of any car, the back. Now, I don't know if you can notice this, but there's this sort of element that kind of joins both sides of the car, and it stretches right across the rear. That's one of those tricks that car makers are using more and more to visually sort of widen their cars, and it works quite well with the T-Cross. It's actually quite a boxy car, and there's a reason for that, which we'll find out later on. But notice how these wheels are quite nicely matched with this eye-catching color. Here in Singapore, at least, there are three sort of pre-packaged color schemes that do this sort of matching. Actually, have a look at the interior as well. You'll see a touch of that, so you can see what I mean. Yeah, we'll spend more time in there later. But while we're at the side of the car, I want to show you how nice flourishes like these lines here sort of break up the surfaces and really give the car quite a lot of presence. Talking about presence though, you should come and have a look at the front of the car. Now, this might look slightly familiar to you, but check out how this grille, it's nice, bold and upright. It's got chrome and all these interesting elements. But what's interesting is that the headlights kind of blend into the grille. Now, have you seen that before somewhere? If you're thinking yes, then you've probably seen the Volkswagen Touareg, which is the brand's biggest SUV. So I think that's quite a neat trick, making your smallest SUV look a little bit like the biggest one so that it kind of fools the eye. R-Line badge, of course. So we're going to actually see a few touches of R-Line goodness inside the car and outside. But for now, in terms of styling, I think this gets the thumbs up from me. Okay, so welcome to the back of the new T-Cross. As you can see, actually, even though the car is not huge outside, I'm not really lacking for space in here. It's got quite a boxy body, like we said earlier, but it's got actually quite a lot of headroom. And legroom's pretty good as well. There's no rear aircon, so minus points for that. But it has these two new USB-C charging ports. Now, just a generation of car ago, actually, VW was quite stingy with its USB charging ports. But nice to see they've addressed it. Now, the thing is, this car isn't super wide, so it's spacious when there's two people back here, but I'm not so sure how it would feel with a third person, so that's something to think about. But a lot of people buy SUVs for their versatility, so there's some of that to show you. The boot itself starts out pretty large for the class. I think it's 355 liters, but you can actually slide this forward as one unit, but that lets you sacrifice some legroom for a bit more cargo space. If you need still more, you can do the sort of usual trick of folding the rear seat backs down in a 60-40 split. And when you do that, that gives you 1,281 liters. So actually pretty big for the class, and that makes this quite a versatile little car. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier, where the T-Cross isn't huge on the outside, but it's actually fairly roomy inside. So it's one thing to have a large car, but I think it's more important to have a spacious one. Okay, so here we are in the front seat of the T-Cross, and I have a look at these, this active info display thingy here. Now, with the press of the button, I can just alter these displays here, and I actually think it's quite nice. It's sophisticated, and it kind of lets me look at all the information I want to see, and actually feels quite fancy. So that's a nice touch, but in some ways you can see where this car's been built down to a cost. Like, some of the plastics are actually quite hard, and they actually feel quite cheap, I have to say. And look at this, I haven't seen one of these for a while. It's a handbrake that you have to use muscle power to use. Okay, that's an anachronism. But I have to say, even though this isn't meant to be an expensive car, it has been spec'd out really well, at least here in Singapore. So if we just have a look around the car, in addition to the active info display, you've got this 8-inch touchscreen infotainment system. Now, apparently 8 inches like the average size these days. I mean, I don't know when that happened, but it's crystal clear, it's crisp, and it's got nice displays, and it's intuitive to use as well. And it actually looks quite sharp as well. Then you've got important things like park assist. I don't know if you can see it in the active display, but now you can find a parallel parking spot, and the car can reverse itself in if you lack the ability to do it yourself. What else can I show you? Dual zone climate control, of course. Now this is a car for young couples, I think, and this is how they make it to become old couples without arguing about temperature. One thing about this car though is it's full of like useful little storage spaces. Okay, there's not a huge amount between the front seats, but actually quite a lot for the class. Cup holders. I don't know if you noticed, but there's a tray here that you can put stuff in, and it's rubberized so your stuff doesn't slide around. If you had a mobile phone that could be charged with the Qi wireless charging system, well, look at the size of this phone. Just place it here and hey presto, it should start charging. Excellent stuff. Oh, one thing actually I quite like is the Beats by Dr. Dre sound system, or just Beats as they call it now. And it's not just a logo, I mean there's actually a subwoofer in the back, so you can be bumming along to your favorite tunes and actually having quite a nice time in the T-Cross. If you're wondering whether you'll be having as much fun driving the car though, well, we did drive one earlier and this is what we thought. So, what is the T-Cross like to drive? Well, here in Singapore, the car is available with only one engine option, and that's the 1.0 TSI, a little 3-cylinder with 115 horsepower, 200 Newton meters of torque, and that drives the front wheels through a 7-speed twin-clutch transmission. Now, there isn't a whole lot of power, but it actually is quite a torquey unit, so when you have to accelerate and sort of merge with traffic, it actually does quite a good job. Anything above that, well, if you're sort of on the highway in another country and you want to pass much faster cars, then things might be different. But as far as driving in Singapore traffic goes, it is actually peppy enough to do the job. In terms of how the suspension copes with Singapore's roads, I have to say the first impressions have been quite good. I don't know whether it's because the wheels aren't super huge or whether or not it's just been tuned for comfort, but it does seem to absorb those small niggly jiggly bumps that seem to infest all our roads these days and do quite a good job of smoothing all that stuff out. So some SUVs have a really sort of brittle and jittery ride, but this is not one of them. In terms of handling, we haven't driven this much on the open road, but I have to say it is an easy car to drive. It's easy to see out of. The steering is extremely light actually. If anything, it could do with a bit more steering feedback and weight up a bit more when you go around corners, but just in terms of punting around the city and, you know, sort of driving in and out of car parks, it's easy to see the extremities of the car or feel where they are, and you know, steering is nice and easy to work. The whole car actually has that sort of feel. It's a very easy to get along with and user-friendly thing to operate, and that actually makes it, I would say, a car that may not be as exciting to drive as its funky sort of colors and upholstery would suggest, but it should make for a car that is relaxing, sort of welcoming, and just easy to get along with overall. So there you have it. Those are our thoughts on the Volkswagen T-Cross, and it's quite easy to see who this car might be for here in Singapore. Maybe a young executive who's looking to kind of upsize and upgrade from a compact hatchback or a small sedan. By the opposite token, maybe an empty nester who's willing to downsize his car without wanting to downsize too much of what he gets from a car. Anyway, this is VW's smallest SUV, and SUVs are becoming ever more important, not just to VW, but you know, sort of all car brands. Volkswagen itself expects to have 30 different SUVs on sale around the world by 2025, and by then it thinks that roughly 1 in 2 cars that it produces is going to be an SUV. So while the T-Cross is not a big car, it might be something that is hugely important for Volkswagen. So if you want to find out more about the new T-Cross here in Singapore, be sure to check out our review on www.carbuyer.com.sg, and please give us a like, share and follow. See you next time.